Hello everybody, this is Becca from the present, just letting you guys know before we dive into the past that this video has been comprised over the last 4 months and is going to contain all of my spoilery thoughts on the Four Horsemen series by Thalassa. This video has been brought to you by my patrons and the AlphaHo book club, which is my Patreon book club where we read fantasy romance series in their entirety. Every month I post my spoilery thoughts on the book of the month on Patreon, and eventually at the end of a series you guys get a full-length spoiler-filled vlog with all of my thoughts on the series of choice. I'm really excited about this because I've been wanting to bring book diaries back to my channel for a while. I haven't done too many over the last couple of years, but through various book clubs you guys are going to be getting a whole ton more spoilery vlog content across 2023 and beyond. The Four Horsemen series by Thalassa is a post-apocalyptic fantasy romance series where in each book we are following one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse as he comes down to earth to bring about the end of days, and along the way he falls in love with a human woman who eventually tempers his ways. This was a series that I was kind of anticipating reading because I really enjoy Thalassa as an author, as she is the author of the Bargainer series, which is a fairy romance series that I love, but I was a little bit unsure about the plot of these because it's not a series that I would typically pick up if it wasn't written by Thalassa. So we do have some shenanigans along the way throughout the past 4 months, but I really just wanted to pop in to let you guys know what you're about to see and to say a big thank you to my patrons for indulging me on this and allowing me to start up a new little book club, which is essentially the fantasy romance equivalent of Catch Up Book Club. So if upon watching this any of you guys would like to get involved in my Patreon or the AlphaHo book club, the link is always down in my description box, and the next series we are actually going to be tackling is the Bloodgrave series by Avila Roth, which is going to take us pretty much the entirety of 2023. If you do decide to join us, we have more than a book club. There are reading sprints, 24-hour readathons, Discord access, watch-alongs, live shows and a whole bunch of other stuff. But if not, that is also fine, and I hope you enjoy my thoughts on the Four Horsemen series. So I am very shortly about to start Pestilence by Thalassa, which is our very first AlphaHo book club pick, and I don't know what to expect from this because I gotta say the only reason that I'm reading this series, I mean you guys, we all voted on it, but the only reason why I'm interested in this series is because it's by Thalassa. The actual synopsis of this series doesn't really do it for me, so I don't know whether it's the dystopian or whether it's the fact that it's like a series of standalones, but it's not hitting all my usual buttons. I'm more of a high fantasy girly. I'm more of a fairy girly. Fairy, not furry. Just to be clear. So the only reason why this is anything that I'm going to be reading is purely because of Thalassa. But I have to say, do you guys think that this guy on the cover looks like Tyler Blackburn, but obviously with like long blonde hair? Because that's all I'm seeing. As far as I'm aware, this is a series of standalones, kind of. I'm assuming there's some like interconnecting plot, but each book follows a different member of the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse as they come to Earth and fall in love with human women who I'm assuming are going to convince them not to bring about the end of the world. I think I have heard that Pestilence is the baby of the bunch as well, but I also think I've heard that there is at least a couple of trigger warnings, content warnings in here of like stuff that Pestilence does because he is one of the Horsemen of the Apocalypse. That has me wondering how he's the baby, but I guess we'll find out. So I've just made it back off holiday, which means I'm about to stop ghosting this vlog because while I was away, I made it to page 104 of Pestilence. And you know, I'm enjoying this more than I expected to. The way that I've seen people, like I've only been glancing in and out of the Discord channel because I don't want to like get any accidental spoilers or etc. But the kind of overall opinion I was getting, or like vibe I was getting, is that it was kind of average. Some people really didn't like it and everybody else kind of thought that it was just all right. I am actually enjoying this more than I anticipated doing. I weirdly like Pestilence already. I don't know whether he's giving me Tamlin vibes, but I know guys, Tamlin vibes is not a good thing. But like in book 1, the Tamlin vibes is all I was living for. And I don't know whether it's just like his physical appearance that is reminded me of Tamlin, but it's doing it for me. I don't like our main character so much. The way that she's like, oh my god, I hate Pestilence, but he's so hot, is getting on my nerves a little bit because I just don't really feel like I'm gelling with her, but like I am attracted to him. I have to say, I feel like there would be more in terms of like the cruelty of Pestilence in this. Because I mean, yeah, he's done some awful stuff. He made her, or is making her, run behind the horse. She's been dragged behind the horse, and all of that stuff is terrible. But like, it does kind of fit the vibe. I understand why people don't like things like that in romance, absolutely, but just the way that these are the four horsemen of the apocalypse, it makes sense that he's not going to be kind to a human that's inferior to him. So I feel like the way that he's been treating her is kind of what I expected from him. I just don't see how this is going to end. Like, is it going to be as twee as I think it is? Like, is this going to be Horseman of the Apocalypse finds woman who makes him realize that he shouldn't destroy the world, and then the apocalypse just stops? Because there's no other way for this to turn out well in terms of it being a romance, because I don't even understand at this point how our main character is going to accept the fact that Pestilence has already killed thousands of people. Even if they do fall in love and she changes him and he stops spreading disease, he's still killed all of these people. The world will never be the same after the four horsemen of the apocalypse have traveled through it. So I'm really interested to see how the end game of this is going to play out. But it is like 3-ish p.m. or something on Monday, and it's also Halloween. So I do kind of like, because I have been on holiday, today was just my traveling day, so I have absolutely nothing I need to do apart from unpack a little bit later, and of course keeping an eye on my bunny who's got her cone of shame on. I want to get a decent amount of this read to make up for like how much I've been slacking, because obviously like you guys can't tell how much time has passed, but I started this a week ago and I'm only 100 pages into it.
Honey, I like moving out of state, I went out of my mind. Took a few nights, blew all my money without even trying. You said if follow dreams, didn't want to leave as much as you wanted. I'll go so I can face my fear, knowing you'll never care if I'm alone.
Good morning. I did not read when I said I was going to read last night. I actually ended up napping for most of the afternoon. So not as much progress was made as I intended, but I am now up to page 172 of this. So they've had their first kiss, and you know, I like this book. I'm not even kidding. I did not think that I was going to enjoy this based on everybody else's reactions. So far I'm having a good time, but Brandy did say in Discord that he's hot, like Pestilence is hot, for the first half of the book. And then I don't know. I don't know what happens, but they had their first kiss, and all I really have to say about it is that it's a choice that they had their first kiss. Like, Pestilence's first experience of a kiss was after she had just vomited up the entire contents of her stomach, and as far as I can tell, she didn't even rinse her mouth afterwards. So that's poor Pestilence's idea of a kiss right now. And I have to say, she is still annoying me, because like I said earlier, I don't understand how this can end in a way where she can come around to what Pestilence is doing. Like, I just don't know what possibilities we have unless he can resurrect all of the dead people that he's killed, which I don't think is actually in his skill set. But I understand why he would be attracted to her, but I don't get why she would be attracted to him because of all of the awful, terrible things that he's done. Like, he's killed children. We've seen him kill children in this book. But in terms of, because I feel like you have to go into a book like this knowing that he's one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and that comes with like a certain set of expectations, which he's definitely fulfilling, but doesn't make him like an ideal romantic partner, obviously. So I feel like you do need to go into it with an open mind accepting that. And I was like, oh shit, I need to sneeze. Sorry, did I startle you? Did I? And because I've gone into this expecting Pestilence to not be great, then I'm really enjoying it, but I can see why people would think that it was just ridiculous, for one. Also, why people maybe won't be able to get behind the Horsemen as like love interests. It's very dark. It's not even 5 p.m. It's 4:50, but I'm going to be taking a break for a while. I've actually read quite a bit today. I'm on page 290 and I'm still enjoying it, and it's weird, and I don't know what kind of like mindset I'm in to enjoy this, because there is no doubt about it that it is kind of a little bit ridiculous. Like, some of the stuff that happens in here is normally the kind of stuff that when it happens in a book, I'm rolling my eyes and I'm like, this isn't realistic, it's not believable, it's not immersive, because it doesn't make any sense. Yet it's happening in here, and while I know that it doesn't make any sense, I'm kind of behind it. Pestilence as well is Big Sweetie, which is a weird vibe from a Horseman of the Apocalypse, and for the most part I'm definitely enjoying him, because like I've said, like his motivations make more sense than the female characters character's motivations, and it is kind of coming a little bit clearer like how this is going to play out. Like the purpose of the women, or at least the woman in this, is to temper the Horsemen, make them realize that humans aren't all bad and that humanity is worth saving, and at the same time the woman's job is to help assist in humanity kind of realizing that they need to change, I feel, to save themselves from the apocalypse. But it still doesn't make a whole ton of, like, I just, as a person, I don't feel like I could get behind the fact that Pestilence is killing all of these people, because it's like kind of trauma, you know, like he's taking her to places and he's making her tend to the dead as he's killing them. I mean, Ruth and Rob, absolute angels, he didn't even spare them. So I don't think in her position that I could just kind of overlook it, because humanity has been bad and humanity needs to change. Because the way that she's harping on about it as well, with him being like unforgivable and a monster and he's done all of this stuff, and she switches to like tending to him, could never be me is what I'm saying. But I still really love it, and it's just weird for me to be in this mindset when I'm somebody who normally would say like, this is stupid, it doesn't make sense. But right now it's fun and enjoyable, and we all know, I've said it before, we all know that I don't like fun. We've had a couple of sex scenes now. The first one, I have to say, I wasn't the biggest fan of. We'll call it the deflowerant of Pestilence. Just because he talked too much in it. He ruined the vibe for me. But overall, I'm feeling the romance. I like Pestilence. I'm having a great time with this book. And after my break, I do aim to come back and finish this, which will be, I think, about 74 pages. And then we're done. Blasting through it quite quickly as well, considering I have been reading it for over a week. And also breathe through my cup of coffee over it this morning. This copy truly is done for. I don't know what happened when I was away as well, but when I picked it up yesterday, there was like red grease stains on the pages, and I don't know where they've come through either. This book has been through the wars, I am telling you. We are at the time of year where the majority of my vlog updates have to be done in terrible lighting, but I have just finished Pestilence by Thalassa, and I actually really enjoyed this one. I put it through Pile and it's come out as like a high 3-star, and I think that is because it's definitely not perfect, and as I've said, it's one of those books that people describe as fun that I typically don't like, but in this instance I had like a really good time with it. In terms of like the reasons why it can only be a 3-star for me, first off, didn't appreciate the resurrection trope in here, but kind of saw it coming a mile off. The conclusion of the plot was predictable. I'm actually kind of sad that it did go into that kind of like, these human women are going to temper these horsemen and convince them to change their minds and not destroy the world. And I hate that Pestilence had to change himself so much for Sarah, not because it's bad that he doesn't want to end the world, but just because like he is Pestilence. And I have so many questions, because at the end of this, when he comes to Sarah, he says like, I've completed my purpose, like I'm done. But what does that mean? Because to me it seems like he kind of abandoned it because he decided that he loves Sarah more. Surely he has to answer to a higher power for that. Like, he is one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. He's like a harbinger of doom sent by God. So him kind of like, was this in God's plan? Isn't there some sort of like, he hasn't completed his task. Humanity haven't proved themselves worthy. He's just fallen in love and decided that he wants to be a better person for the woman he loves. So surely there's some kind of consequence to that. And I was surprised that he turned up kind of like immortal. Like, what did he do with his armor? He turned some of it into a ring. Where did the rest go? One thing that I did really enjoy about this though was the epilogue. I thought it was fire, the way that he just kind of like dropped everything and was like, shit, war is coming. And the last line of this is actually, pray for the world, dear Sarah, war is coming. So that has me hyped for the next book. Interesting that there is a little bit of a time jump in here. We have, I think it's going to be like a 5-year gap between like the end of this book and the epilogue, which is assumedly like war starting up straight after. But yeah, overall really enjoyed it. Sad that it came out as 3 stars, but just with like how predictable the plot was and how Pestilence was a sweetie pie, but also like that's not my usual type of love interest, though I did really like him. And the motivations for Sarah just didn't make sense, because even though he decided to stop and he decided that he wasn't going to carry on like burning the world to the ground and making everyone sick, she literally watched him kill children. And he killed hundreds and hundreds of people, all of these dying people that she had to tend, all of these people that he murdered. And because he's changed, she accepts it. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I just don't feel like that's a hurdle I could get behind. But saying that, I do feel like you have to go into these books with like a little bit of an open mind, knowing that you're dealing with 4 horsemen of the apocalypse who are here on earth to fuck shit up. And that's something you have to get on board with. You can't say like you're mad because they fuck shit up, because it's kind of in the title. I just don't understand how like the love interest, not the love interest, the main character Sarah kind of came around and accepted this. But I enjoyed it. I've heard that this is the weakest of the four, so I'm really excited to dive into War, which is quite a bit chunkier than Pestilence actually, so we'll see how the pacing is in that one. So currently that means goodbye for now, and I will see you guys again when I do decide to pick up War. So I started War and I'm not far into it. I'm only 20 pages. The general consensus in Discord seems to be that people are enjoying this one a little bit more than Pestilence, but some people are still kind of on the fence about the series overall. At 20 pages in, I'm already feeling it. War, as a character, is blatantly Khal Drogo, and I'm here for that. I'm here for that vibe. He's just rode up to the main character, who's called Miriam, who I'm already enjoying a little bit more than... I don't remember what... Was she called Beth, the woman in the other book? But I'm already feeling Miriam more than I was feeling her. So we're off to a good start. And hopefully it continues like this. I do think I'm going to enjoy War more than Pestilence, just based on the way that people talk about Pestilence. But I'm not sure what the rating and like what the overall consensus will be, because this is also very long. I can't remember exactly. I think was Pestilence like 300, just over 300 pages. This one's like 485, so it's quite a bit longer. So hopefully it actually has the content to warrant that many pages.
Afternoon on a train, I only took it because it started.
Not me legitimately feeling bad for this guy. I'm on page 114 and Miriam has just seen War raise the dead for the first time and like send them into a city to kill everyone who's left. And he puts his hand out to her and she backs away and says, "I hate you." And it says War's confident demeanor slips a little at my words. I swear for a moment he looks almost uncertain, and I actually feel bad for him. For some reason, like, I know that Pestilence is described as the baby of the group, but for some reason, like, I feel Pestilence was a lot more hostile. And I'm really liking War. Like, I'm feeling for War more as a person, whereas Pestilence was a bit bratty. So, yeah, I can't believe that this has me feeling bad for the guy after he's, like, literally led an army into a city to slaughter innocent people. So, I am 200 pages into War, which is not as far as I expected to be at this point, but it's not because I'm not enjoying it that I'm not reading it. I've just been real busy with like an excessive amount of candle orders, etc. It's November, this always happens. And then after work, I'm just really struggling to settle down and get in a position to read. Like once again today, I've had all evening. I think I finished eating at about 7:30. It's now 10 to 10. I think I've read like 20 pages. I've just not been picking up my book. For the last 2 hours, I've been just doing like not reading and not even anything else. I've just kind of been sat around on Discord. So 200 pages into this, I do want to get through a big chunk tonight. Hopefully I'll be able to get through at least another 300 pages, which considering I was thinking about going to bed in 30 minutes, not sure how that's gonna work. Somebody in Discord, I can't remember who it was, but somebody said that their husband said that this guy looks like if Jon Snow and Khal Drogo had a baby, and literally though, literally, it's hot. I support it. I don't feel like, I don't know what it is, I don't know what this says about me, I don't feel like the fact that War is killing people is as much of an issue to me as it was in Pestilence, because we all know like the biggest thing that I said about it that was making it kind of unrealistic is that these women, or the woman Beth, I think, in Pestilence, was overlooking the fact that Pestilence was killing all these people and how it can like never be undone. Even if he stops killing, he still has killed. Although I do have a theory about that actually. I have a feeling that it may be undone in death. What? Shut up. Is she mad? So I have a theory that because the last book is death, that there is going to be a way to kind of like restore people to the earth when like humans have their full redemption, and then it will kind of undo all of the bad that the 4 Horsemen did, and they'll be able to live happily ever after with all of these human women. Maybe the whole goal is for all 4 of the Horsemen to find love, and then like, I don't know, the duty served or whatever. We'll have to see what happens. I don't feel like it's as much as something to overcome the fact that War is going into all of these cities and decimating them and leading a warband as it was with Pestilence. And I don't know why. I can't explain why, because obviously War is bad. Slaughtering people is bad. Decimating cities for no reason, oh well, it's his mission from God, but like, is that a reason? No. Loads of people have waged wars because it's their mission from God, and I don't really feel like that's gotten anyone anywhere. So all of that is still bad, but I just feel like there's something so much worse about making people sick and watching them die of illness. That still gets to me more than war coming in and like slaughtering people. And is it because we're desensitized to things like that because of media? Whereas actual sickness is something that we have to deal with in a real life situation. Like, you have to watch the people you love die of illness a lot of time, and it fucking sucks. Is that why? Is it because war is a man-made situation, whereas like pestilence and famine are things that are more of a phenomenon, that are more outside of like human control? War is directly in the control of humans. It is something that was created by man. Is that why? Because we have so much more of a direct relationship to it that it doesn't seem as foreign and as tragic as like famine and pestilence do? I don't know. But where in the first book, it wasn't annoying me, but like I very much picked up on how the main character was still falling for pestilence in spite of the fact that he was killing all these people. In this one, it's kind of jumping out to me how the main character is not falling for war and is resisting him so much when I just want her to get on with it. So it's like complete opposites. So let me know if you felt the same way in the comments. I know I said at the beginning of this vlog that the general consensus is that people are enjoying war more than pestilence. There's a lot of people now who are saying they liked pestilence more, which is intriguing. I cannot relate, could never be me. I'm definitely a war girl. So I have no idea why this is something that I cannot get out of my head right now. But how is anybody brushing their teeth? Because both of these books, they're on the road. Like, they're traveling, and from what I know Bobby said about this series, I think that's a recurring theme throughout all four of them, because each of the Horsemen have like a different path around the world that they're taking, which is why the other one started off in Canada and this one's set in like Jerusalem, or that's where it started. Is anyone brushing their teeth? Why is this something that I'm now just stuck on? And I'm pretty sure the reason why, because it came to mind earlier, but it's just come back to mind because I've just finished chapter 27, which is the first like sexy scene in this one. And she tries to leave to get back up to go to her tent, and he says like, no, you're staying. And then it kind of like skips and she wakes up. And like, I know you can make this argument about like peeing, like when does anybody pee? But I feel like peeing is actually mentioned more than brushing teeth is. So are people brushing their teeth? Is that something we can do in the apocalypse?
Afternoon in the fall, this weather always makes me think about it all. The woman across me, she's wearing a trench coat, a bouquet of roses, I wonder what they're for. A candlelit dinner, a date in the park, a night at the theater.
Those of you who are out here saying that Pestilence is the baby of the group, I don't get it. I'm on page 313 of War, and I'm at the point where we finally had like the full sexy times, and it's just after Miriam nearly died, so War has raised like a group of the dead to protect her and circle the tent because he can't trust his riders to do it because they keep attacking her. And he said, death always comes between humans, I won't let it happen to us. I see his age then in his eyes, thousands upon thousands of years of wars, so many lives and so many deaths. It's moments like these when I remember that he was never born and he can never die. So this, not only is he just generally scared of her dying through battle, it also kind of alludes to the fact that like human relationships always have to end because somebody always dies. Even if like you're together forever, somebody always dies. He is immortal, so like that's not applicable to him. And I'm like, how are you all saying that Pestilence is baby when Pestilence is out here being a brat and dragging people behind horses, and we have War here being a sweet little cinnamon roll? Don't get it. So I just finished chapter 42, and the angst level in that chapter, oh my god, it's the one where Miriam has ridden road ahead to warn the city that War's going to be coming through, and he obviously catches up to her and finds her because like literally she made a ruckus as she left. I don't know why she was surprised. So he raises the dead and starts killing people, and she threatens to hurt herself if he doesn't stop, which obviously sends him flying into a rage. And just the way that they were stood in the street screaming at each other, loved it. 10 out of 10, 5 stars. a masterpiece. I will say that this is like skewed a bit long. Like it keeps coming to the same thing over and over again, where she makes like another bargain, like she progresses their relationship to get him to show mercy, but then she keeps pushing for more and more and more mercy, and he's like, I'm war baby, I'm gonna kill the people, there's nothing you can do about it. And they keep coming to this kind of stalemate. So I feel like you definitely could have cut some of those instances and the book still would have been decent, because it is like nearly a 500-page book, which I do think is a tad unnecessary, but I'm enjoying it. So you know how I said I'm not having the same issue that I was having with Pestilence about how I just don't understand how the main character is going to overlook the fact that the Horseman has done all of these terrible things, killed all of these people, made the human women be a part of it. And that was a big issue I had with Pestilence, whereas with this I was like, it's just not getting me quite as much. It is now that war's killed the entire war camp. Just killed everyone. I am really, really into this book right now, way more than I thought I was going to be. And I love how they're both so stubborn that neither of them are giving in. So she goes and saves a ton of people, so he kills a ton of people, and it keeps going back and forth between them. And the way that he didn't kill Zara and Mamoon and the kids and said, for your soft heart, I don't care what this man does, I still stand him. Sorry, but I'm not sure that I can cope with the main character being so paranoid about being pregnant and talking about how she hasn't had sex very often because it's not easy to make sure you don't get pregnant in the apocalypse. For her to then forget that she's so paranoid about getting pregnant and potentially getting pregnant. Like, what? Okay, so I get where this is going with the saving the children instead of killing them and saving the people instead of killing them for Miriam because mercy, etc. But it's just impractical. May I suggest not sacking the cities in the first place? Because what is the point in bringing all of these kids to camp where they just become a burden? I mean, it's great that you saved their lives, but what you could have done is not displace them in the first place. Just a thought. So I did finish War last night and I ended up giving it 4 stars, but kind of like just on the cusp between a like low 3 and a high 4. I don't like the baby trope. And we know that I don't. I didn't mind it in here, but it's really just not my favorite trope. I'm thinking though, because it has been used in here, that it won't be used later on in the series, although I do feel like there is something coming in Death that may also be something that I don't enjoy. I mean, we'll see how it goes. And also the resurrection trope, again, I feel like I can let it slide because I feel like it has some relevance in that Death is obviously the last book. And I do like going back to my theory earlier about how I feel like Death is going to fix a lot of things, possibly. He has the power to, at least. I think that Death and us revisiting him at the end of every book, he's going to play into that. And I also feel like it's really hyping Death up for me. Like, I'm excited for that book. I'm not excited for Famine. The book's over there somewhere, but like the guy on the cover, if you've seen the cover that matches this one, he's not an attractive guy, and he's supposed to be my favorite. And I can't, because like when I look at this cover, it brings me joy. When I look at Famine, not so much. I really loved how he had this badass exterior where he was like a ruthless warlord, but to the main character he's like a cinnamon roll, and how he just kept getting offended when she would say like, I hate you, and he was just like so wounded, like, why? I'm so nice to you. And he literally was. And also like when she tried to kill him and he was like really, really upset, and then he stayed away from her and she thought that he stayed away because he wasn't bothered, but he was. And then we had a couple of lines in here that were very much sending me back to like Rhapsodic, which is one of my favorite fantasy romances, also by Laura Thalassa. So I had a really good time with War as a character. In terms of the book, it had too long. I feel like we had a lot of repetition in the middle where we're flipping between her saving people and him killing people to punish her, and then just flip-flopping between the two for an unnecessary amount of time. This could have been more around 400 pages than 480, but I really did like the angst level and the scenes that we had in here where they just stood in the street shouting at each other, and the relationship, to me, the back and forth between them. I liked Miriam as main character, and also just how hot War was really did do it for me. But then once again in the middle we got to the point where I had the same gripe as with Pestilence, where he was just doing too much for me to feel like it was plausible that the main character could come to the conclusion of a healthy relationship with War without like bucket loads of trauma. What are you doing? Yeah, I know you want to kiss, but you can't always kiss when you want to. In regards to that though, and how I said earlier that it wasn't bothering me as much, I feel like it's because War is a very typical kind of character that we would follow in any fantasy or fantasy romance book. It's just usually that the love interest in the fantasy romance that we typically read is leading his armies to battle for the greater good, whereas War is just leading his armies to battle for slaughter. So I feel like that's definitely why I didn't have as much of an issue with that element of it. But it just kind of got worse and worse as War got more and more ruthless as the book progressed, with, as I was saying, how Miriam was saving people, so he was killing people to punish her. But yeah, definitely a step up from Pestilence. Definitely enjoying this series more, and I'm not as excited for Famine as I was previously. One, because I don't like the guy on the cover, and two, because I really liked War. But I am intrigued because you guys seem to think that I'm gonna love Pestilence more. Pestilence seems to be a Marmite horseman. He's either everybody's favorite or the one that everybody hates. So I'm really excited to see where I fall. Good evening. I have finally started Famine. I'm 104 pages into it now, so almost a quarter, but not quite. And I'm not sure at the minute how I'm feeling about this one. And that is mainly for the same reason why a bunch of people have DNF'd it or haven't quite started it yet in Discord. It's just because I know that the plot is going to be very similar to the plot of the two books that came before it. Something that is giving me hope though is how many people have finished it and said that it's their favourite in the series so far. That is what I want. That is the energy that I need. That is what I'm really hoping is going to come from this. I know that a lot of people said that he's sassy, like he's the sassiest of the three, and I mean, to be fair to him, we haven't really seen much of him yet. Anna's stalked him, he's taken her captive, and they're just about to start the jaunt across the world to slaughter millions of innocent people. But I feel like when people said that he was sassy, I was expecting a different kind of sass. He's very much like, I don't know actually. I feel like I expected him to be kind of sassy in the way that like Cassian is sassy, where he is like a flirtatious, jokey kind of sassy, where Famine is like me. Famine is behaving like me right now, where he just has very little interest in Anna, and I don't know, he's treating her like she's stupid a little bit, and he's just very like flat and has no fucks to give about anything. So different vibes than I expected. So far so good. I'm really just not feeling any particular way about it right now, because it is tedious that the plot of all four of these books is pretty much like the same kind of pattern, which is, I think I've discussed before, I definitely have, how I don't love series where the books all follow a different couple. It's because of this, because they're very like formulaic, so it's not my personal favorite like kind of structure when it comes to a romance. But then saying that, I have enjoyed the last two, but I think that's mainly because I like romance written by Thalassa. So I'm now 194 pages in and I'm not feeling Famine. And I don't know why. I don't know whether it's me right now. I don't know whether I'm struggling with focus, although I don't feel too tired or anything. I'm very much not falling into it the same way I did, like especially with War. And we've just had the discussion where Famine and Anna are talking about why he's doing the things that he does. So he had that big party in the room full of people, and then he kind of slaughtered them all, and she stabbed him in the hand. He brought her back, tended to her wounds, and he's talking about how Pestilence is more tied to humans than he is. War is more connected to humans because War is born of human nature, and that he was always supposed to be the cruel one. And I'm not feeling it, because once again we come back to this thing of Pestilence is supposed to be the baby of the four horsemen. Right now I'm saying it's Famine, because a lot of his actions are born out of trauma, and the fact that he was kidnapped and kept in captivity for however long it was and tortured throughout that time. So a lot of what he's doing is vengeance. Like any sympathy that he had towards humans to start off with when he embarks upon his mission has disappeared because of what they did to him. But then at the same time, he's mentioned at least once in this book that he doesn't actually want to kill people. He doesn't enjoy the things that he's doing, and he makes out that he's cruel. He makes out that he's bad, and I just think that he's not so far, and I don't know why. I don't know whether it's because we're not getting such graphic descriptions of what he's doing, which I feel like we had this discussion with War where I said I felt like Pestilence was worse. And I still think out of the three in terms of their abilities, I still think Pestilence is worse, and I think that is because people dying of sickness is something that people have to see every single day and it's horrible. Whereas war, I feel like we're pretty desensitized to, because war is a reality in a lot of countries around the world. And also we have war movies, superhero movies have big battles, fantasy stories always have wars. And I think with Famine, my issue is that we're not really seeing the extent of what he's doing, because Famine is making people starve, and like, yes, he is killing people with plants or just generally murdering people as opposed to starving them out. The main people that we've seen be killed by plants is kind of like after it's already happened, although there have been a few instances of it happening on page. And in terms of him actually killing people, aside from that first instance where it was Anna's town that was slaughtered and Anna was one of the people who he killed even though she didn't die, a lot of that has been happening off page. Like, she can hear it happening and she can hear the cries and the moans of the people who are being killed, but it's not happening on page. So like, he's saying that he's all big and bad and I'm just not feeling it. But then I am also, like I said, like, I'm not focusing very well on this. I'm struggling to pay attention. So at the minute, Famine is my least favorite, which is wild. But then occasionally he does have a little one-liner that I like. Like, I think a recent one is that, oh, he helped her down off the horse and she said, I can get off on my own. And he said, really? Because you're always going on about getting everybody else off. So I liked that, but I'm struggling. I am going to put it down now, I think, and I'm going to pick it back up again tomorrow, because I do feel like I've just read 80-90 pages and I don't feel like I've retained too much information. So I'm going to try again tomorrow when I feel a little bit fresher. So I'm 320 pages in now, and I gotta say, I'm still not having the best time with this. I'm not sure if I'm past the first sexy scene now or whether I'm like in the middle of it, but we've come to an interlude at least. And one thing that I will say is that the way that Famine used his powers within that sexy scene was interesting and I liked it, but I don't know why I'm not having a good time with this book. I actually considered earlier putting it down and coming back to it next week, but then I feel if I do that, then I won't want to come back to it. And Famine in himself, like I said before, has like one-liners where I do kind of like him, and then sometimes I'm not all that bothered. But something did actually really make me like him a little bit more, which is when he went on a murderous rampage and killed like the cartel boss and like all of the guards and stuff. I enjoyed that because he did the thing of where he was like, you made a mistake and it was touching her. So I love that, and that really like made me warm to him and warm to the book a little bit. And then I've carried on and it's like, he's sexy, but I don't like the book. And I don't know whether it's like the main character is fine. Something I do like is that she has seen the worst of people. She's seen the worst of men working as a sex worker, and she was also abused by her aunt when she was a child. So she has seen the worst of people, and Famine has as well, but she can get behind him a little bit and what he's doing, especially when it comes to the people like the cartel boss and the guards, because she knows like what evil humans are capable of, and some part of her wants revenge on humanity for all of the terrible things that humans have done to her. I kind of wish we'd leaned into that a little bit more, but obviously it like comes back around to the fact that she's going to temper Famine and be like, look, I've seen the worst of humanity, but I still don't think it's a good idea to like kill everybody. But I like that they have that in common, and how that occasionally makes her switch into like a more vengeful mode. But I don't know whether the reason why I'm not having as much of a good time with this is that I feel like the plot's a lot slower, and it's not necessarily any slower than Pestilence was. War had a lot more plot. I feel like War was a lot faster paced. I feel like even War maybe covered a greater period of time. I don't know what's happened in this book aside from the fact that they have like moved location a couple of times via horse. I don't feel like they've moved location as many times as in Pestilence, and there isn't as much going on around the main couple as there was in War. So I don't know whether it's like the plot feels stagnant to me, so I can't get into the book. But I do think Famine's sexy. At the minute, in terms of his sexiness level, I would put him in between War and Pestilence, with War being my favourite. But in terms of book, like, this is literally my least favourite. I'm not even having a good time with it like I did with Pestilence. I really genuinely enjoyed War. Pestilence, a little bit iffy, but I thought it was a good time. I don't even think this one's a good time. I'm actually pretty bored. So, I did finally drag myself to the end of Famine, and I gave it 2 stars. I really didn't enjoy it, and I don't know why. I don't know what happened with me in this book. I think it must just be the lack of plot. It's either I'm bored of the same kind of like formulaic structure within these, or it's that this one in particular very much has a lack of plot, because it just didn't feel like they explored very many locations in here compared to the scope of Pestilence and War. It felt like we were in 2 locations, and romance wise I feel like it wasn't a romance and then it was. The one benefit that this book has for me is the end. I really liked the end and the way that it's setting up death. Hello, baby. You're just gonna sit right there, aren't you? You are so helpful. You are such a credit to my channel. I could not do this work without you. So I do like the way that this did start setting up death, and the way that we seem to have a little bit of a variation of the plot at the end of this one, with death actually coming to Famine and strangely denying him. And I want to know what that's about, because he gave War and he gave Pestilence mortality without any repercussions. Like, they're free to go and live their lives as they please now, but Famine isn't, which is a little bit unfair to me. But I am glad that that happened because it shook up the plot a little bit. I'm also interested in the 3v1 dynamic that we're gonna have in the 4th book. I think that death is the longest in the series, which, based on War being just a little bit too long and then this one being very boring to me, I was a little bit concerned about the length of death. But it does feel like we're actually going to have a little bit of a plot that ties in the series alongside assumedly a romance with death and a human girl, so that he can get on the same mentality as his brothers. Famine was okay. I mean, he was pretty hot, but I did find like some of the dialogue to be especially cheesy, and I just wasn't vibing with this book at all. I don't know whether it's me. I don't know whether it's the repetitive book formula. I don't know whether this one in particular didn't have a particularly compelling plot, but I wasn't vibing with this one. So we're all over the show with the ratings of this series so far. We have a 3 for Pestilence, a 4 for War, and a 2 for Famine. So I guess let's see what death holds. I'm hoping for another 4-star, but after this I'm not too sure. So I have started death, and so far so good. I'm only 50 pages in, but I do have to say that I was putting this off for a long time. I just didn't really want to read it after Famine, especially with all 3 of the previous books being a little bit repetitive. Now I know that this one is going to break the mold a little bit and go outside of the same repetitive structure we've had in the other 3, but motivation to pick it up was low, so I'm glad that I've really enjoyed the last 50 pages. So far I really like Lazarus as a main character, and I'm very intrigued about Death, because Death is very, I want to say, resigned to his mission. He doesn't seem to enjoy it. He seems just like he really doesn't care, and really just focused on his task, but not with any kind of passion like the other 3 were, where they really felt like what they were doing was right. He's just like, gotta do what I gotta do, and he's just killing people. I also like the atmosphere that it creates, where his power is so vast and people just like drop dead. Like, there's no sickness, there's no vines, there's no violent wars. It's literally just an instant death. Like, I find that too, like the starkness of it, to be super dramatic. So from the Discord, a lot of people have been crying, which I'm a little bit worried about. I don't know if I will. I don't think I will, but that's not something I expected from this series at all, for people to have such an emotional reaction to it. And it's not anybody's worst book. It's quite a few people's best, and it's quite a few second bests, but it's definitely not the worst, which, after having put it off for so long, it gives me hope, essentially. So I'm going to be getting through this in the next couple of days. If you guys want a timeline for when I read this, I mean, you'll know from seeing the actual vlog, but it's the week where I'm doing reading like it's my full-time job. So I currently have 2 days left of that challenge. It's bang on 9 now, so I gotta get reading. But yeah, this will be done by tomorrow, and luckily it seems pretty bingeable so far. So I'm 130 pages in, and I think that this one might be my favourite book in the series. At least it is so far, which is interesting because I really enjoyed War, but I think in terms of the pairing and the main characters, the main characters and their relationship in War is more similar to this than Pestilence or Famine are. And I guess Pestilence and Famine are like slightly like each other. But I just love the way that she can't die, and there's this like kind of begrudging, I don't want to say relationship, but connection between them, because she can't die so he can't kill her, and he can't die so she can't kill him. But the determination of her stalking him across the map or trying to be ahead of him to lure him in, and the way that he's just toying with her essentially, is really doing it for me. I'm up to the point now where he's tied her up in that like decrepit house to go do his job, and I feel like they have the best sexual tension out of all of the books that I've read so far as well. And I'm just loving the, I don't know, death. I like death, and I'm just really enjoying it. I think as well something that helps and it hinders is that because of the description of death, he's just Hunt AlphaHo to me, which I mean, I mean, my Twitter handle, I'm a Hunt AlphaHo fangirl, but at the same time, that also makes me sad because I didn't like House of Sky and Breath, and I'm bitter about it. But yeah, so far, so good. And I'm excited to continue. I feel like because of the length of this, it has to lull at some point. But considering I've read 132 pages so far and not too much has happened, it doesn't feel like a slog. I've just read the chapter where the kid, Ben, is really sick, which baby, how do we feel about that? Unsure. I'm not the biggest baby fan, we know this. I've never met one, if I'm being honest, but I don't really have a desire to either. But yeah, the baby's sick, and Pestilence has found her and said like, death's on his way. Me, Famine and War are at this motel. The baby needs antibiotics, you should take him to a doctor, which makes sense that Pestilence would know because he's Pestilence. But as a doula, how has it got this long? How has she only gone to the hospital? I assumed it would be difficult to find a doctor, even though civilization is like relatively stable at this point, because it's like the 4 Horsemen apocalypse has been going on so long. But like the next chapter, he says go to the doctor, he needs antibiotics and he'll be fine. The next chapter, she just goes to the hospital to get the antibiotics. Why didn't you think of that? Why didn't the baby was obviously not well. How did you not just take him to hospital?
I didn't understand that.
That's because I wasn't talking to you. So I am 388 pages through Death now. I have just under 100 pages to go, and I still would say that I'm enjoying it potentially the most of all 4 books, but at least if it's not the best one so far, it's at least on par with War. And I think something to do with that is the unique perspective that the main character is gaining from Death, because Death views death differently to humans, because obviously like we all think that death is bad, whereas death is, in terms of religion, it's an end to suffering, not the end of existence. So it's interesting that we're getting that perspective in this book, but also particularly I feel because I once again I'm going to reference the fact that like I was told that Pestilence was the baby, and he's actually the most brutal of the 4 of them, because brutality and violence and taking joy in violence is, as we discussed with War, a very human thing. And the more we go through the Horsemen, as was mentioned in Famine, like the less humane they get, like the further away from humanity they are. Therefore, Death is the kindest of the 4 Horsemen, because even though he kills people instantaneously, he has no desire to make anybody suffer. He's not cruel to the main character as Pestilence was. He's not slaughtering people like War was. He doesn't have the bitterness that comes from the trauma like Famine does. He doesn't enjoy killing at all. He hates it, but it is his duty. And we only really see him be cruel the further we get into the book, because he's becoming more human the more time that he spends with Lazarus. I'm really enjoying the symbolism that's coming in this book as well, with the lovers and life and death and Lazarus versus death. And I just, as a book with a plot, it's definitely the best of the 4. In terms of men, like which is my favorite of the men, potentially still War, because the thing that I don't like about these is well, with some of them, is the weird like virginal horsemen of the apocalypse, because like yes, they're so far removed away from life that they don't understand a lot of it, but they're also like age-old entities. And especially like they should just, if Death is so attuned to life, I feel like he should have a lot more knowledge about the creation of life than he does. And also potentially, is there a plot hole in this series? Because these men are only men now. They've been entities for so long. So Death was Death before he was in a body. He was just Death. Pestilence was just Pestilence. And even though Pestilence and War are not immortal anymore and no longer have access to their powers still exists, because there's still illness in the world, as illustrated in this book, when the baby, the pointless, stupid, useless baby that had no purpose in this book, which is the one thing that I'm bitter about. Like, that was weird, came out of nowhere and wasn't necessary. But illness still exists, but Pestilence isn't controlling it because he's let go of his powers. So how does Pestilence still exist? Because before Pestilence was in human form, he was still all illness. But now that his powers have been removed, and he isn't Pestilence anymore, therefore Pestilence should not exist, realistically. Am I right? I'm not sure. That's just a thought I've been having over the last like 50 pages or so, but I'm really excited to see how this one's going to play out. I'm actually happy I've just got to the point where her mother's been resurrected and she's discovered that people don't actually want to be alive, but I mean, like, can you blame them? So I'm glad that the theory that I had in War isn't going to come true, where Death is just going to kind of like restore the world to as it used to be and bring everybody back to life. Very, very close to the end, but I gotta say, the City of Angels, genius. I didn't even clock on until Lazarus mentioned it, but genius. And this end scene is shaping up to be pretty epic. 100% the best book in the series. I wish they were all like this. The fucking end. The fucking end of this book. Oh my god. Oh my god. I was not expecting that, like, at all. So it is time for us to have a little bit of a chat about Death, and also I guess about the series as a whole, because I have now finished this book and I really enjoyed it. It is for sure 100% my favorite book in the series. I didn't expect the end to be as emotional as it was, although I didn't cry. And that epilogue though, it did hit me in the feels because I truly was not expecting it. It reminded me very much of like The Notebook and poor baby Death, you know, because I feel like I felt for him the entire way through this book, because he's doing a good thing. Like, yes, people deserve to live, but also like Death isn't cruel if you're like viewing it through this like religious lens of death is just the end of suffering and there is life after death. So sweet baby Death was potentially my favorite of the Horsemen. I'm not sure if I enjoyed War just a little bit more in terms of the Horsemen in themselves, but it just feels like the whole series was kind of gearing up to this one where she finally like hit her stride, which I know some of you guys agree with me on that. And also I feel like she got lost around Famine. If we're talking about the series as a whole, this one was 4 stars. Really enjoyed it, but to bring it round to the series as a whole, I feel like she got lost around Famine. I feel like she knew where she wanted to end it with Death, and I feel like Pestilence was a fun introduction. War, she was doing something a little bit different than she'd done in Pestilence, and I feel like she needed to get to Death and she didn't know what to do, and Famine happened. I really like Famine himself as a horseman, especially in this book, more in this book than his own book, because he was a little bit, I don't know, I doesn't love Famine. As we know, it's a 2-star read, and it wasn't actually because of him, it was because of his book. But I didn't like, I liked his sass a little bit, but I felt like he was sassier and stronger as a character with a personality in Death than he was in his own book. And I also really loved in Death this whole Avengers Assemble situation we had, where it was our main character Lazarus, and I love the pairing of Lazarus and Death and what Laura Thalassa did there with the life versus death, etc., and like the symbolism. But I loved the team up at the end, and I feel like the end scene where we have Death floating in the air and these 3 horsemen and Lazarus trying to stop him, it felt very, very cinematic. So I think I know for sure that this isn't Laura Thalassa's strongest series. I know she also has more than the 4 Horsemen series and the Bargainer series, which I love. So I am considering reading some of her other stuff, and I know that one of her new books, Bewitched, which is set in the Bargainer world, is one of my most anticipated releases, so I'll definitely be picking that up. But yeah, as a whole, I do feel like she kind of knew where she wanted to end it, and the first 2 books were strong in leading up to this point, and I really do feel like she lost her way with Famine. I don't don't think I would have read this series or continue to read this series if anybody but Laura Thalassa, or I guess another author that I really enjoy, had written it. She has a very compulsive, addictive writing style. I think that she writes her romance well, although I definitely feel like The Bargainer is more well done, but that is coming from the perspective of a reader who prefers a romance that evolves with the series, and it kind of becomes, I like there to be conflict in the relationship for the first book, potentially the second, as the characters get together, even if we have like them get together at the end of the first book, and then in the second book maybe I do like a second book breakup because of the angst that we get from that. But then I like the series to be like the couple versus the world, with the world providing the conflicts, not so much a series that has a different couple every book. So I feel like I was just more inclined to enjoy this less than the Bargainer series from the jump. But this is a fun kind of concept that I don't think I would have been able to read if anybody else had written it, because I don't think I would have had the stamina to continue. So thus concludes Death, and also our first AlphaHo book club series. Thank you guys for reading this one along with me. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and also thank you for joining me throughout the course of this video, which I'm really excited to edit together into one big thing, because it obviously, like, this is the longest form vlog I've done, with like it being one book per month, so that'll be interesting to see. And our next AlphaHo book club series is going to be the Bloodgrey series by Rila Roth, which is going to be even more fun to edit together because this is a long undertaking. This one is stretching February to December at least. So down in the comments, let me know how you enjoyed the 4 Horsemen series. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. A big thank you, of course, to all of you guys, my patrons, for making this happen. Thank you for indulging me in a fantasy romance book club, which I've wanted to start for a long time, and making these longer form spoiler videos possible, because I know that a lot of people really love book diaries. I kind of run out of steam when I'm doing them. Like, I need a reason to do them, something to hold me accountable to doing them. Otherwise, they kind of just slip by the wayside. So yeah, I'm really glad that I have a excuse to bring book diaries back to my channel a little bit more frequently. And I do think towards 2023 we're going to be seeing quite a few of them, because I have a couple of things in mind. So I do hope you guys have enjoyed this one, if you've made it this far. If you have, please don't forget to like if you liked it, and subscribe if you wanna, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.